Welcome to The Slow Dive, where we explore innovation, storytelling, and the people reshaping our media and cultural landscape. I'm your host, Farida. Today's very special guest is Larry Namer, an industry veteran with over 50 years of entertainment experience. Best known as the founder of E! Entertainment Television, now valued at over $5 billion, Larry helped build a cultural phenomenon that transformed entertainment news and launched the careers of icons like Howard Stern, the Kardashians. E! remains a cornerstone of pop culture today. After the success of E!, Larry continued to innovate with ventures like Metin Global Entertainment and LGN Media, where he now serves as the president and chairman. Under LGN Media, he's behind several entertaining and timely projects, including Uncanceled, Conscious Parenting, and the Stall Talk podcast. From cable tech to cable titan, Larry Namer has built billion-dollar brands and open entertainment markets across the globe. He has led the charge in television, media innovation, and global entertainment. We are honored to have him as our guest on The Slow Dive today. Join us as we dive into his incredible journey and the future of storytelling in a constantly evolving entertainment industry. Welcome, Larry. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Well, we always have icebreakers. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions unrelated to a lot of the entertainment. What does home feel like for you? What does home feel like?
It's kind of my comfortable place at, where I do my best thinking at home, not necessarily in the shower, but primarily in the kitchen.
Oh, kitchen. Do you cook?
I am a food fanatic and a cooking fanatic, yeah.
What is your favorite thing to cook?
Well, when I try to I'm actually as good a Chinese cook as any Chinese person on the planet. So when I'm looking to impress my guests, I'll cook a Chinese meal.
Awesome. Okay, well, great. That is good to know. Multi-talented. You can cook and create television as well. Great. Amazing. When was the last time you felt awe?
When I watch amazing TV shows, I just think TV has never been better. People keep saying, don't you feel bad TV's dead? And I'm going, no. It's all storytelling, and it's never the advent of the streaming services has created incredible opportunities for creators. And when I watch a show like White Lotus and I just look at the quality of the writing and the thinking and creativity, I mean, that puts me in awe. Yes,
White Lotus is definitely one of the top tier series right now. And yes, I agree with you. I love that. Well, let's start from the beginning, the grassroots, Brooklyn to Los Angeles. Did you always know you wanted to be in the entertainment business, or was it more of your gift of entrepreneurship that led you to entertainment?
I never knew I wanted to be in the entertainment business, and I just kept bouncing, higher, stuff in it. No, my family, immigrant family, their aspiration for their children was get a civil service job and be able to retire with a pension and do all of that. I was the first kid to go to college, and my degree was in economics, and I thought I was going to be a teacher, and I quickly found out they weren't hiring teachers or economists, so I ended up taking what I thought would be a kind of a mindless temporary job. And I said, I'll take something mindless and I'll figure out what I want to do. But I ended up getting involved in then an unknown industry called cable television, which was then unknown. I started as an assistant underground splicer in Manhattan, New York, for $90 a week. And but because I had this educational background, I knew how to read and write and do all that stuff. I moved from the assistant splicer to the splicer to the construction guy. So I kind of ended up from the lowest level of the technical jobs to the highest level of technical jobs in a matter of 6 months, where most people took 5 or 6 years to get from place to place.
Amazing. So here you are. You spent how many years were you in the cable technology business, and how did you know to make the jump into more of the entertainment, pop culture area?
Well, what happened was the company that I worked for, which was called Sterling Manhattan, they ended up getting bought by Time Incorporated when Time was still a publishing company. And, you had the Harvard and the Yale guys there trying to figure out what it is those guys do, that they go underground every day and come up at 5 o'clock. And then somebody figured out that I knew how to read a balance sheet and knew what those guys did and stuff. I was 25 where they convinced me to make the jump from the union to the management. So at 25, I was made director of operations of Manhattan Cable, which at that point was the largest cable system in the United States. And I had 300 and some odd people working for me then and stuff. So I had to learn to be a manager very quickly, but so all the operating departments that I kind of grew up through now reported to me. So all the construction and the underground and all that service installation. And then, the big cities began to realize that cable TV was going to be more than just provider of good reception. And all the big cities that wanted cable, but the caveat was they didn't want the cable to go on telephone poles like they were in rural. So the city of Los Angeles issued a franchise to a Canadian company, and it was going to be the most advanced cable system ever built in the U.S. But the caveat was that it all had to be built underground. Well, the only person around that knew how you build underground was me, because other than Manhattan, nobody ever built underground cable systems. So I got recruited to go out to California to build Valley Cable, which is the first 61-channel two-way interactive cable system. And now things, finance, marketing, and programming were part of my responsibility now. So I really began to understand those things, because I kind of knew the technical stuff already. But you're a Brooklyn kid. You come out to California and all your friends are going to parties and premieres and meeting celebrities and stuff like that. So of course I wanted to go, and I'd call up the studios and, go, hey, put me on the list for those things. And they would go, no, you're more like a utility. You're like the phone company. We're not going to put you on the list. And then finally I met someone in marketing at one of the studios. And I said, look, I really don't understand this, that the most effective marketing vehicle you have for making me want to go to see a particular movie is the movie trailer, that 2-minute trailer. I said, but the only time I ever see a trailer is when I'm already in the movies. I said, do you want me to see that when I'm in my house to make me want to go to the movies? And they said, yeah, but it's too expensive to buy all that TV time and stuff. I said, tell you what, you give me those trailers, I'll put them on TV for nothing, but you put me on those party lists.
I love that.
And they said, yeah, sure. So I hired a kid and we edited them together. But then we started doing audience surveys. We said, what's your favorite channel? And people go, oh, I love CNN. I love ESPN. I love that trailer channel. And I kind of said, wait a second. I said, I'm getting the best 2 minutes of a $50 million movie. Then movies were only 50. I'm getting those for free and people love it. And, so I kind of filed that in the back of my head. And then the company that I worked for actually sold out and they went back to Canada and they said, well, Larry, when could we expect you in Toronto? And I was like, no. I said, I didn't go from Brooklyn to LA to go to Toronto. I said, I'm done with the cold. That ain't happening. And so me and a friend of mine, Alan Marufka, we started saying, let's come up with ideas to keep us in California. And we always looked and said, if you really look at cable TV back then, we said it's like an electronic newspaper. Yeah, you had CNN as the headlines and ESPN as the sports page. But what was obviously missing was the second most read section of any newspaper, which was the entertainment pages.
Yeah, and lifestyle. Yeah.
So we said, yeah, okay, we're going to create the entertainment pages of the cable TV electronic newspaper. And we wrote a business plan and we thought we were brilliant. Then the going rate to start a TV network was somewhere between $60 and $100 million. After 3.5 years of people telling us, people don't start TV networks. Only big media companies can do that. You're not Time Warner and you're not Fox and you're not Disney. Individual people just don't start TV networks. It's never been done before and it's not going to. So nobody would give us money until we finally met someone in Wall Street who had it was a bond company, but they just got involved in investment banking. And we met the guy and the guy loved it. And he said, this is great. I really would like to do it. And I said, well, could you give us more like the 100 million so we could do everything we really have in our head? And he went, no, I'm only allowed to sign for 2.5. And I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do with 2.5 million? I mean, I can't even buy the cameras for 2.5 million. And he said, well, that's all I'm allowed to sign for. And Alan and I just looked at each other and said, you know what? Nobody's ever given us 100 or even 60. Let's just take the 2.5 and we'll figure it out. So I had a friend who was teaching radio, television, film at University of Texas in Austin.
Mm-hmm.
I called him up and said, Brian, do you have a bunch of kids that need intern jobs for the summer? And he said, yeah, we had trouble placing. I said, just send me all you got. And so he sent us 31 interns. And you don't realize, because he is now, it's the monster. It's in 142 countries, and, valuation, I think now is up somewhere around 7 billion. But he started with 11 employees and 31 interns.
Wow. That is so, I love hearing this story because you're a true visionary, because you at 25, you were the director of operations. And because you worked your way up through the company, how was the relationship building? Because you worked your way up. So you knew every department of the business. And then you moved out to LA. Where do you, I mean, what I gather and when I'm gleaming from this, that you were always taking notes and you were always like observant of like where the opportunities are, what was missing. What can you tell us about in the early days that led you to from an entrepreneurial POV? Like, what were the challenges or the mental frameworks you used to kind of overcome the challenges before you got to this amazing place?
Well, we always, Alan and I both kind of shared this feeling about Hollywood, which was Hollywood is funny stuff. Don't try and make believe it's rocket science. Back then, before he existed, people would fight for a 20-second soundbite on Entertainment Tonight or Access Hollywood. And we just had fans of of the genre, whether it be horror pictures or indie films or foreign films or whatever. They could smell out BS. And they really want more and more. They want a deeper insight into whatever it is, the subject matter that interests them. So we just really approached Ewood that way, with kind of this a little bit of a reverent attitude. And, at first, it was close to when MTV started. And we just looked at MTV and said, okay, they stand a host in front of a green screen. This is when MTV used to actually show music videos. They stand a host in front of a green screen, and the host points to the green screen and says, and Madonna has a new video, and then the video plays. I said, we could stand a host in front of a green screen and go, and Schwarzenegger has a new movie, and show the clip of the Schwarzenegger movie. So that's the way we started. And that's what really gave us the opportunity to start, relatively simple and inexpensively, because there was no ego there. I mean, again, we didn't have enough money even to buy like real cameras. So we actually found the company that was selling the old video equipment that we used for making sales training tapes. And we used that. And of course, it didn't look anywhere near what everybody else looked like. But it was interesting because people would write in and go, wow, that's like so amazing. It looks so pirate. Yeah, it looks so pirate because we couldn't afford it.
No, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, I think entrepreneurship it's a journey. And for you to be at such a young age and for it to pitch an entertainment network that's never been done before, and to start with less than you asked for and to get that going. How long from your pitch did it take to actually have your first broadcast? And what was the first show?
Well, we started doing basically taking movie trailers, which we got for free, and we sliced and diced it, So we would have, a show called Coming to the Theater This Week. And that would be 1 half-hour show. Then we'd have, Now in Production. That would be another one. Then we'd have the directors. It would be another one. The foreign films. So we started out entirely based on movie trailers with a host, or, MTV had, video jocks. We had movie jocks. As a matter of fact, the original name of the channel was actually called Movie Time. We changed it when we decided we were going to broaden and be about all entertainment, not just movies.
Yeah.
So, we did that. But then, as soon as we went on the air, everybody was going, oh, my God, why don't you tell us that's what you want to do? We would have given you the money 3.5 years ago, which is probably not true, but everybody would say that. But then, we grew rapidly. We were the largest, or I should say the fastest growing cable network in the country when we went on. And when we finally started getting like some revenue in and stuff. So the first show we did, and going with this Hollywood is funny stuff thing, people thought we were out of our mind. When I went and told our production team, I said, I got this great idea. I want to do a TV show that makes fun of TV shows. And they were like, Larry, that's crazy. Why would you do that? Like, that show was Talk Soup. And Talk
Love it. Love it. Love
Talk
Talk
Soup
Soup.
made a lot of careers for a lot of people, and ran 26 years for, one of our crazy ideas. Then as we went along, the next one, I met this tall radio guy in an elevator in New York, and he was telling me how cool his show was. And I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And, but I went to see it, and I loved it. And I went back and told the crew, I said, I want to put cameras in this guy's radio studio. And they were like, Larry, when you wanted to do Talk Soup, we thought you out of your mind, but now we're convinced you're out of your mind. They said, radio's been dead for 40 years. Why would we do that? I go, you don't understand. This is not a radio show. This is an ensemble. This is a sitcom. This is a reality. There was an old TV show here in the U.S. that was very popular called WKRP in Cincinnati. I said,
Yeah.
This is a reality version of KRP in Cincinnati. And, had that guy was Howard Stern, and obviously Howard did pretty well. And so because we weren't traditional and we didn't come out of the media world where everybody thought alike, we just thought up ideas that, made sense to us, but didn't seem to make sense to a lot of other people until they saw it.
No, this is truly a trailblazing story. Like, you were outside the box, you were doing your own thing, you guys developed your own IP and style, and that's why it's incredible that Joel McHale, Talk Soup, Howard Stern, like I was gonna say Ryan Seacrest, the Kardashians, like everything. I personally, I think, yeah, out of box thinking, and just so it is innovative. Like you were following your own. So how quickly did your audience? What was after? How long before? Was it 6 months or a year or 2 years in the early of the entertainment channel? Did you know that we got something really great here? Did you?
From the moment we flipped the switch and went on.
Oh wow! Okay.
Because Alan and I just knew, when we look at it, even today, when people, marvel at look, we executed really well. Give us credit for that. But I'm going, how hard was it to figure out that people around the world love Hollywood gossip and Hollywood celebrities? I said, it should have been obvious to a lot more than Alan and I, but obviously it wasn't. But, again, I minimize it, but we did exercise really well. Again, we revolutionized the red carpet. We revolutionized making people see that pop culture really was, it wasn't TV, film, or music. It was kind of everything, including fashion. But, the first Academy Awards that we ever attended, we applied for credentials. And we were rejected. They said, no, you can't come. You're some dumb little cable network, and we're not giving you credentials. And being a Brooklyn kid, not being used to people telling me no, we literally climbed over the fence and snuck into the Academy Awards. And we were on the red carpet for about a half an hour before security caught us and threw us out. But when we showed that footage, people were writing in going, wow, we felt like we were like a fly on the wall watching something we're not supposed to. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Of course you were. But, that's really led to a lot of stuff because back then everything was very stiff. And people go, so Mr. Cruz, tell us about your next movie. And we were like, wow, Tom, those are great shoes. Where'd you get those shoes? We want to get a pair. And that kind of led to, the conversation with Joan Rivers. And we said, Joan, let's do this thing called Fashion Police.
I love Fashion Police, Melissa and Joan, and like the pre-red carpet shows that, love that. It's like, it's a ritual before watching the award show. You watch that.
Yeah. And then, we revolutionized it. And the reason people would watch us versus what would be on whatever the network that was carrying the Academy Awards was because of attitude. We were not making believe it was like curing cancer. We just had fun with it.
No, so how, Larry, did you spot like talent like that? Like, to build your teams and your programming, like is there something that you were like, obviously you've done amazing with launching so many careers. Like, what was
if you look at the, on the management side or the administration side, I've always just had this thing. And I learned it when I was at Manhattan Cable, and I had two people. My direct boss was a guy named Frank Ciano, and his boss was a guy named Nick Nicholas, who went on to become the president of Time Warner, chairman of Time Warner even. So that really gave me a lot of management skills. And I learned one thing from those guys. It was like, always hire people that are smarter than you. And no matter what it was, I don't want people who just agree with me. I wanted If I need an editor, I want an editor that knows how to edit better than I do. If I have to hire a writer, why do I need to hire a writer that I could do the same thing for? So we just keep hiring the best people we could possibly find. And that builds on each other. And again, that attitude, that kind of, this is funny stuff. Let's have fun with it kind of stuff. I mean, we just took our chances doing lots of stuff. So it became a great place to work. And, so that was kind of it. But, when you look at the talent side, everybody says to me, they go, oh, come on, you were so lucky you had all those great hosts at the beginning. I mean, Greg Kinnear went on to the Academy Award. Julie Moran went on to be the first woman to do Wide World of Sports and then Entertainment Tonight. Katie Wagner went on to do Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. Mark DiCarlo went on to do Studs, and on and on and on. That was not an accident because Alan and I looked and said, with very little money, where could we put that money most effectively? And we said, we're never going to dazzle anybody with fancy production value. Even if we had more money, we weren't going to outproduce or, special effects anybody. So we really put it into picking those hosts. We said, that's the most valuable thing we could do. So we actually, I think we interviewed a little bit over 10,000 people. And I think we put 7,200 people on tape. Back then we had tape.
Yeah.
And so to get those first 5 hosts, we just put every dollar we had into that process.
That is such a resourceful take. You're like, let's outbeat the competitors because we're going to have amazing talent. That's going to be engaging and attractive to the audience. And it's true. I mean, all the amazing, the wonderful hosts that you just mentioned, they have that presence, they have that charm, and they were able to hold attention for an entertainment network. So yeah, I mean, very good insight. I think to learn that from you, because I think at least for some of our audience, we're in the independent producing world. So we deal with constraints. We have great ideas, but we're like, oh gosh, the resources are slim. So this is really encouraging and inspiring to hear what you just said, that you guys were like, this was our protocol. That was a game plan. Amazing. Amazing. Larry, I wanted to move on to global media development and the future of entertainment and talk a little bit more about Metin Global Entertainment and the Chinese entertainment landscape, if you care to share with us.
Well, even before, while I was still at E, I ended up bringing someone in to run the U.S. operations, on a day-to-day basis. And I really was probably one of the first people to really start thinking about Hollywood not being a geographic place anymore, but really being a mindset of, it's a measure of quality, it's a measure of creativity. But, if you go back to visual entertainment or visual content creation, you had to come to Hollywood to make it because you needed big sound stages, you needed these very expensive cameras and stuff. So anybody around the world that wanted to do anything needed to come to Hollywood to do it. But as technology kept marching forward and the cost of equipment, the cost of production was getting less and less and less, we really looked at it and said, you know what? It's not going to be long before Germany realizes they could do their own programming. That, Turkey knows they're going to do their own programming and stuff. So I really went out and started looking to build the international side of the business. And like I say, now E is 142 countries, arguably the biggest, the most influential. Everybody uses the term influencer. There's no bigger influencer in pop culture in the world than E. On any given day, we reach more people than all the other influencers combined. And so I started really paying attention to foreign markets. And then by chance, a friend of mine who was a lawyer had some clients that were looking at a deal in what was then the Soviet Union. And he said, hey, Larry, there's a media deal. I don't know if it's a real deal. Would you go over with my clients and tell me what you think? So I went over and I thought, going to Russia, sure, I'll do that. But I ended up, the deal that they were looking at made no sense at all. So I encouraged them to pass on it. But I met the mayor of St. Petersburg, and it was just when the Soviet Union was crumbling. And, the children's hospital and the orphanage in St. Petersburg were no longer being funded out of Moscow. And the mayor said, would you help me start a music festival so we could raise money for the hospital and the orphanage? And, my first reaction was, look, I don't know anything about doing music concerts. And he went, well, you must know more than I do. And I went, okay. So we started this big music festival. And And we did that very successfully. It was called the White Nights Festival, and every year between June 16th and June 21st, being the longest day of the year, we would raise 100% of the budget, the annual budget for the hospital and the orphanage. And but it was interesting. The guy that I used to work with, the vice mayor of St. Petersburg, was the guy who actually had to do all the work. Was a guy named Vladimir Putin.
Oh my God!
And yeah, you may have heard of him. He's been
Yes.
in the news lately. But yeah, so I worked very closely with Vladimir on that festival and stuff. And then when he kind of went up the ladder and ended up in the Kremlin, he realized that if you're really going to build a consumer economy, you got to offer the products that people actually want to buy, which are typically Western luxury goods, the Gucci's and the Pradas and the Chanel's and that. And so they asked me to work with the Minister of Communications to rewrite regulatory policy for media, and which is fairly simple stuff. It's like TV ads are 30 seconds, 60 seconds. They're not whatever you feel like today. So I did that for them. And then I also had some popular TV shows. I said, well, I'm here, I might as well do TV. So I had some really popular TV shows over there that did really well. And but then the Chinese began to realize that they too needed to do media reform. And they loved the Russian model. So they went to the Russians. And the Russians said, no, Vladimir's guy in LA did it for us. And so I ended up getting called in by the Chinese government. So Meitan is, the first thing was helping on the media reform. Then they said, would you help train young TV executives on the process of creativity for profit? And I just said, just by the definition, that sounds like something I'll do. And then, the folks that we work with said, Larry, why don't you start a media company here so we could learn from you? And I just said, you don't let Western media companies in here. And their answer was very simple. They go, we don't let the ones that we don't like. And I'm like, okay, why are you going to be so nice to me? And they said, it's really simple. We have a fight with Rupert Murdoch, it's front page of the Wall Street Journal. We have a fight with you. We go out for drinks. We scream and yell, and tomorrow we're okay. They said, for now, we'd rather do it that way. So they set us up to be an experimental company, and we've been functioning. But what we did there, which was very different than anybody else who tried to get in the market, we just said early on, we're going to produce things in Mandarin language for Chinese people. We're not going to take what we do anyplace else in the world and say, here, we'll subtitle it for you and whatever. We said they're way too proud, way too nationalistic. If we're not prepared to do it in Mandarin for Chinese people specifically, we probably shouldn't be here. And that's what's kept us there, because we really are very focused on making it work the way it should work in a country. It's the biggest country. Well, India or them are the biggest country, or stuff like that. So we've been doing a lot in China. Everything from TV, film, internet content, brand building, live events, museum events, the sports. We brought the Harlem Globetrotters there. We do concerts there.
I really love what you said, that you created programming and content for the Chinese audience. To me, I think that's very important to note, to have that cultural sensitivity to every market, because I think that's a really important point that you made. And I mean, that's definitely, I would say, as someone just listening to you, because I'm going to ask you about Vladimir, because that's pretty amazing that you worked with him too. So like, what are some traits that you would say cultural sensitivity, respect, creating content for the audience itself, not, like you said, just putting subtitles over American? What are some other things that you think are important for producers and storytellers and to have in their toolkit when they're approaching global entertainment from your perspective?
Well, when a lot of my feeling, I grew up in Coney Island, which is, even though it's Brooklyn, it's still not trendy Brooklyn. It's still a hood. And it was a very multicultural, multiracial thing. So I was very comfortable in that environment to begin with. Coney Island, I think Caucasians were like 25%, 30%. And so I was comfortable there. But then also coming from parents who, still had that immigrant mentality. I mean, you take like my mother, people crack up when I say this, but it's true. Like after my dad passed and my mother was living in Florida, I would go down and visit her. And I go, hey, tonight let's go for Italian food at 8:00. And my mother would go, no, we're going to go to the deli at 5:30. I'm like, well, I don't eat at 5:30. And, mother's response was, these are the rules. This is my house. These are the rules. If you don't like them, go stay in a hotel. And that's kind of the way we approach every market we go into. Guests in someone's house. Maybe not my mother, but we're there. We're not there to change their government, to change their philosophies and stuff. We're there to entertain them and hopefully put a smile on their face before they go to sleep.
Oh, I love that. I love that because one of our taglines for our podcast is that we're all interconnected. And I think one of the beautiful things you've done, Larry, with entertainment and your other businesses and other companies is that entertainment and storytelling is universal. It doesn't have to be political. Everyone can come to that. And yes, it's a safe space for all of us just to exist and be entertained and create joy. I love that. I love that. And I love hearing that you used your mom's words and use that as a framework. Where did your mom and dad migrate from?
Well, the family, we grew up very Turkish.
Oh, nice. Okay, great. So do you speak Turkish?
I don't speak a word of anything other than my parents were, of that generation where they just wanted the kids to be American as quick as possible. So even though they would talk to their parents and their brothers and sisters and stuff, and actually my parents spoke Spanish. My dad, if you go way back, the family emigrated from Spain to Turkey to Cuba, then the United States to South America. They would not speak in front of us. They wouldn't teach us the things. So, so I'm stuck with English only.
No. But look at you. I mean, you're a global entertainment executive and producer. So you're bringing all that to your programming and your story. So I love that. So what did your mom and dad think of your entertainment career? Because you weren't a doctor or a lawyer.
They never quite understood it.
Okay.
My mom, after my dad passed, and my mom would come and visit me in L.A. She had no idea, of what E was or what it became or stuff like that. And she'd knock on my door in the bedroom like at 6 o'clock in the morning, and go, what time do you need to be up? I'm going, it's 6 o'clock. I'm up now. They were still like, are you sure this is what you want to do? And is it going to give you enough money to be able to retire and stuff like that? I mean, they were still in that immigrant mentality.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've done a great job, Larry. I mean, it's so inspiring. Do you think now where we are in the television producing landscape, do you think global production is a way to go for like independent producers and storytellers? Or
yeah, you look at. I think there's room for both. You want to be global and you want to be local. You don't have to be all of one and all of the other. I mean, look, I produce stuff for global audiences. I produce stuff specifically for Chinese audiences. I produce stuff specifically for Russian audiences. And stuff. The world is globalizing. Like I say, you can make stuff anywhere now. But I'll give you a silly statistic, and I always get involved in silly statistics. But the number one English language TV show in China, going back a few years, was Gossip Girl.
Oh, wow. Gossip Girl.
Yeah, Gossip Girl, very, very popular there.
I loved it. I watched Gossip Girl.
Okay. In China, there are more fans of Gossip Girl than there are members of the Communist Party.
Wow.
So think about that. So, if you're a girl growing up in China, do you have more relation to, that you could relate to for your neighbor or to a girl in Cleveland, Ohio? That's a Gossip Girl fan also. So the impact of media is so dramatic.
Yeah.
There, so you got that. And then, you get to basic storytelling and, then you get to technology. I mean, I'm doing stuff now where before, if I would do a TV show and I would go, gee, if this show plays in Germany, they're going to kill it when they dub it in German. But I'm doing this thing now next year. It's called kind of the Oscars of the metaverse. And, while my hosts speak English, we actually we're putting it out on a Zoom feed. Because it's IP based, we know where you came in. So if you're in France, we know you came in from France. We're up to 37 languages now. On the run dubbing or subtitling, however you want to do it. In France, our host speaks French, and in Russia, he speaks Russian, etc. But then again, using another AI program to manipulate the facial muscles so that in France, it's not like you go, they dubbed them in French. he's speaking French. I mean, the lips are moving exactly the way they should. In Spain, he speaks Spain Spanish. In Mexico, he speaks Mexican Spanish. The
Mm-hmm.
implications on creating product or storytelling are incredibly dramatic, because now I know I can create a story that is going to play as well in any part of the world.
That is so fascinating. So you are there. So it's in development or it's already out there? The Oscars of the metaverse.
It's going to be next February.
Okay, next February. So how do we watch that or attend that? And what is the programming like? Could you give us like a quick description of the show?
It's going to be an award show.
Okay. Yeah.
And we're going to celebrate, all the great things that are happening in the new technology world. And, male and female hosts, and they're going to go through the awards the same as anybody, but very small studio audience, but very, very large global audience. So it'll be like the first award show that's really designed to be global.
Nice.
But also, if you want to watch it, so again, it goes out on a Zoom feed, but it's Zoom on steroids. I mean, we're up to 570,000 simultaneous Zoom feeds. And, in places like China where you don't Zoom straight into the home, you drop it off to one Chinese distributor and they redistribute it to 10 million homes. In Afghanistan and North Korea, you drop off one feed and they amplify it. But the whole thing is one of the big problems that I've noticed in the media world or in entertainment. You go back to the Woodstock Festival.
Mm-hmm.
By all estimates, there were 500,000 people who went to Woodstock. But yet when Harris did a poll, like 20 years ago, there were 20 million people who claimed they were there. Well, how do you verify who was really there? But if you tokenize it, so in order to watch our show, you got to buy the NFT. And we made it like $1. We just wanted to prove the point, but it then gets recorded on the blockchain. So for the next 200 years, it becomes irrefutable proof that you watched the first NFT awards.
Amazing. So you are now in the metaverse and doing award shows. That is incredibly innovative. And you're producing this. Do you have like a team of virtual producers? How do you set up like that? And how are you going? You don't have to share this, but I'm personally curious, like, how are you going to advertise it for people to get to the show site or something?
Heavy duty social media.
Oh, okay.
That social media really drives everything there. And the fact that we're doing something so new and so innovative, we've got loads and loads of press that, are clamoring for the story. And we're just holding it back till we have all the details. Yeah,
no, the Web3 is fairly, it's definitely pioneering into Web3. It's pretty amazing that you're doing that. It is definitely innovative. What are your thoughts before we close out today? Like, as far as like the modernization and the use of virtual production, of course, in your business has been very great. AI, what are your thoughts on that? AI usage in our...
I'm a huge AI fan.
Okay.
I've been advocating for it. People talk about, they're going to take our jobs and stuff like that. Yeah, AI is going to take over mundane jobs from people, but it's going to create a whole new level of jobs for people who know how to employ AI productively. A good example, if you were to ask me to write a little mini treatment for a new TV network, it would typically take me 5 days to write that very rough treatment, between doing the research, writing it up, and doing the PPT and all of that. But, with ChatGPT and particularly GPT-4, I do that same thing in 30 seconds now. And then I spend about an hour cleaning it up because it's never perfect. It needs the human touch. It needs the storyteller because it's not a storyteller by itself. And, and I try and explain to people, I said, in 1 hour, I'm now doing what I used to take me 5 days. I said, how could you not love that? As human beings, we all have almost the same amount of time on this planet, relatively. And that the most valuable thing we have is our time and how we deploy that time. I said, so now it takes me an hour to do it. It used to take me 5 days. I could either do more of them and make more money. Now my daughter has a little baby. I got one little grandbaby. I said, I got time to play with the little grandkid. Or I could learn how to speak Spanish finally. How do you not love that? And how do you not embrace it? Now, you've got to have rules and regulations that govern it. And that's where I think, a lot of the problem lies, is that our politicians globally, and not just in the U.S., basically don't understand it and are afraid of it. But, and the first reaction is like, we're never going to allow it and it'll go away. It's never going away. Technology marches on. I get people all the time telling me that, no, it's not going to happen, and I go, look, when you go back not that long ago, 120 years, we had a lot of horse ranchers. Mm-hmm. And, their hope was that everybody was going to need a horse for their horse and buggy. And they weren't real happy when Henry Ford created the car. And I would just take people and go, here, walk over to the window with me and look out. Tell me how many cars you see versus how many horse and buggies you see. It's going to happen. I mean, if you didn't learn from the music industry trying to fight digital music, and then they spent 10 years fighting it, and now they're crying, going, oh, iTunes and Spotify have become too powerful. I go, well, you wouldn't have had iTunes and Spotify if you would have embraced it instead of fighting it. Same thing with visual entertainment.
Yeah, that's a very, very important point that you just made, that we have to integrate this into our creative pipeline and adapt it. Otherwise, because we are in disruption right now. Yeah. Either we employ it as a tool or then we get far behind and other people learn how to use it and effectively go forward on this new business model, new storytelling model, new production pipeline.
I tell people, like I say, the thing to do now is learn how to prompt. If you don't know how to prompt, then you don't begin to understand the capabilities of the numerous AI programs that are out there. It's no longer a ChatGPT world. Mm-hmm. There are amazing things you could do with it. I mean, literally, I wrote a book recently, finally. And after 20 years, people finally convinced me I should write the book. In 4 days, my book was a bestseller in 4 different categories. And people were going, how could that be? That's impossible. What did you do? And da-da-da. And you know what I did? I used ChatGPT 4 to create a marketing campaign for me because it understands the algorithms a hell of a lot more than I do. And I followed the marketing plan. That was an AI-based marketing plan. And in 4 days, we were a bestseller. I mean, how do you not love that kind of stuff?
What is your book title and where can we buy it?
The book is called Off Script, one word, OFFSCRIPT, Recipes for Success. And you can get it on Amazon.
Okay. No, I was hoping that it was like a biopic for you, Larry, that's being developed right now, because it seems like you have a very, very interesting story in your whole journey from Brooklyn, Russia, China, to Hollywood. It's pretty incredible, like what you've done over the years. Hopefully there is a biopic. Are you doing are you writing something? Are you developing something?
No, it took people 20 years to convince me to write the book. Yeah. And quite honestly, if my daughter didn't have the baby and I wanted the baby to know Grandpa through my voice rather than my daughter's, I probably wouldn't have written a book. But my book is interesting because it's somewhere between a bio and a cookbook. Because we broke my life into all these different segments, my Brooklyn years, my Manhattan cable years, etc. But I've been an avid cook since I'm 12 because both parents work. So my choice was learn how to cook or eat peanut butter and jelly for dinner every night. So we match stories during each period of my life mixed with the recipes that inspired me during those times and stuff. So it's this hybrid book that amazingly nobody's ever done one like that before.
Well, Larry, there's a TV show there right there, a cooking TV show, Entrepreneur Success. And you can cook your recipes and talk about your business journey and give insights and also share a recipe with us. I'd love to watch it. That would be a great show. Well, this has been incredible. Our time is almost up. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a couple last questions, reflective questions before we close out our episode. How can we stay faithful to our calling and dreams? What would you tell someone on the same entrepreneur journey?
Well, first of all, you got to be realistic. You got to kind of put your ego aside and realize that every idea you have is not going to be a great one. And you got to be able to I wake up every morning with 10 new ideas, but I'm very good at self-assessing. By the time I go to sleep, I go, boy, what was I thinking? A lot of those were really dopey. Everybody keeps preaching this, follow your passion. I'm the anti-follow your passion person. I mean, most people, what they think of their passion really is nothing more than a hobby. Again, we all have the same needs in life. We need to pay the rent. We need to feed our children. We need to educate our kids, blah, blah, blah. What you really need to do is find something you're good at and then just work your butt off and become great at it. And then that will become your passion. And then it'll give you the capability of spending time on your hobbies, knowing that you still got the rent paid.
I love that. That is great, great advice. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Namer, for joining us on the Slow Dive. Your work has shaped a global pop culture phenomenon, and your insights today, I think a lot of us are going to take in and learn and glean from. So we just wanted to say thank you. Looking forward to reading your book, Off Script, Recipes for Success, and tuning into the first Oscars Academy Award for the Metaverse and all the other amazing things that you're doing. It's truly a wonderful conversation, and we're so grateful to learn from you today, Larry.
Well, thank you for having me.
No, thank you. We appreciate it.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed the Slow Dive, please subscribe and leave us a positive review wherever you get your podcasts. The Slow Dive is hosted by Farida Rafique, edited by Drew Franzblatt. Our theme song is Dive by Sarah. Thanks for listening. Special thanks to Rising Tide Films for supporting today's episode of The Slow Dive, Spotlight on Visionaries.